Welcome to Centered Presents The Future of Health. Join me, Christina Waleka, along with Dr. Molly Brown, as we dive deep into the world of brain-based wellness.
In each episode, we will explore cutting-edge insights and practical techniques that empower you to achieve optimal health and super high-energy living.
Tune in and start your journey toward a healthier, more vibrant you.
Welcome to our podcast. Centered Presents The Future of Health explores solution and results-based care. Our episode with Reef Edwards explores his journey through depression, isolation, reactivity, early age learning disabilities that led to anger, frustration, and shutdown, and his quick turnaround based on brain-based care, Neurofeedback, QNRT, and AIMIT. Reef changed around his life and his journey quickly, and now has the tools to interact positively with his family, socially, and more. This podcast also highlights how often the standard school systems or societal systems often don't support different creative or unique learning styles and create shutdown and stress at an early age. Simple tools to support individuals at pivotal times in their life can make a difference between casting out talented individuals or celebrating their unique personalities and helping them thrive. As we look towards the future of healthcare, a future that empowers individuals and creates positive relationships with those who matter most, our family, our friends, and our social connections, and shifting from surviving in a compromised, frustrated, aggressive state without any support to thriving and living with emotional resilience. Please enjoy our episode with myself, Christina Waleka, and Reef Edwards.
So I'm really excited to talk today on today's episode with Reef Edwards, and he is a success story where we're talking a lot about mental health and his journey.
Yeah, when Reef first came in, he was very shut down and isolated from any of his family structure. There was a lot of anger and friction in his family, and as much shared love as there was, they were all sort of at their wits' end. Like, he didn't even know what he needed help with, but he just was non-functioning in his family unit. And moving forward in the world. And it's something I'm very passionate about too, to help especially boys where they don't always have a support system. And sometimes they just need a little bit of support, a little bit of brain balancing, a little bit of nervous system work to be able to move forward and live a fulfilling, productive life.
Yeah, and Reef's story is so cool because, again, when you take someone who's tried a lot and their family's struggling, they're struggling, they don't really know where to go, and all of a sudden they walk through the door and they walk out a completely different person, and they're happier, the whole family's happier.
It's amazing sometimes the combination of neurofeedback and QNRT, how quickly people come in and they think that they have endless problems, that they can never get any help. A lot of times with those people, it's a matter of a couple sessions and their whole life has changed, just letting them process their situation or process their emotions and moving forward with normalcy. It happens so quickly with the brain-based work that it's amazing.
And like you mentioned before, young men, it's so hard for them to be able to express themselves in a healthy way, and that's not their fault.
You know, all kids are so sensitive, and it just takes a couple big insults that can shut you down, and it can last decades. And so if we can free that up and have people know that it's okay and that they can move forward and they feel differently in their nervous system, sometimes that's all it takes.
So we're really excited to have Reef on because, again, Molly met him in a place where, imagine just like a healthy, good-looking young man was shut down and just isolating himself and nowhere near who they are today. And as you'll see, like a vibrant, thriving guy.
Able to affect people positively.
So please help us welcome Reef Edwards to today's episode of Center Presents The Future of Health. And Reef, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Reef Edwards. I saw Molly for the first time probably 2 years ago now. And we had a wonderful run of massive help and changes in my life. Before that, I really wasn't finding anything that truly helped or fit with the problems that I was having and how I was dealing with my issues and my social consciousness and how I dealt with trauma.
What were your like main struggles?
My main struggles were reactiveness to situations and inability to deal with differences and discomforts.
And what were some things you had been trying along that journey?
Quite a few things. I started with kind of the traditional therapy, just talking and trying to get to the bottom of a root issue, and it was not exactly working for me. I had multiple failed attempts and trying to find the right person, and it was a little bit of an interesting path. And then I went to a clinic trying to find like specifically what was wrong, and it turned out there was direct correlation between how my body was feeling and the problems that were both muscle wise and the way I was kind of holding myself and holding stress. And it was interesting trying to find somebody that could help with that. And it was very difficult to find.
No, and that's something I experienced myself because I worked with Molly too. And it was the first time someone had my body was shutting down. And I was like, okay, there's a mental component and a physical component. And doctors were focusing on one or the other. And Molly was the first one to look at me and say, no, the reason your body's shutting down is because mentally there's a lot going on. And I was like, I think I broke down in tears because I was like, I knew that, like my gut was telling me that, but no professional doctor was listening to or like understanding what I was trying to say.
Completely. Yeah. It was almost unbelievable how she kind of showed me that I was holding trauma in my body and holding my difficulties in my physical self. And I never really put that together. I thought it was two different problems and kind of injuries and different things that were making me feel bad physically. And I never put it together that it was what I was holding on to within my own memories and brain and everything that was connected.
Was there like a pivotal moment in your journey where that made you want to see Molly, or did it just kind of like fall into your lap?
It really was lucky how I ended up hearing about her and hearing about the clinic. I have a good friend or a good family friend that we saw randomly in Sun Valley, and she was working with Molly, and it was interesting hearing her take on what was happening and how she was fixing her health problems through dealing with past traumas and past kind of psychological imbalances. And she could not have recommended her more. And it was very relatable. And I really could see how I could move forward with that idea.
So you kind of just went in open-minded, hoping to have a change.
Interestingly enough, I did not go in open-minded. I had a
I
lot
was
of
going to
doubts
say,
about
not
it.
really.
It sounded too good to be true. It was interesting. Like I'd never heard of somebody doing what she did. And we went in the first time. And my mother was with me, and she was very curious about what was going on and what it was all about. And within the first 10 minutes, we were both like, wow, this is different than anything we'd encountered before. And totally changed our perception of how she was dealing with the issues that were at hand.
So what did you kind of address, I guess, with Molly right away? And where did you see the change? Like how did you feel immediately after? Did it take a little bit of time?
It was immediate. The change was almost instant. Even when I was sitting in her office, she kind of went through how I was reacting physically to my past understanding of situations that I had no control over. And she identified a certain part in my life that was very difficult and something that I'd never really let go of. And I didn't talk about it before. She had no understanding of what was going on in my life, but she kind of identified the time period and who it was and what I was feeling because of it. And immediately when she started going into how I could think of it, a different way of processing the idea, I let go. I walked away lighter. It was almost freeing. And it was something I'd never felt before.
Yeah, and this is the QNRT work, which is so interesting because, again, your body tells a story, and then we balance your nervous system around the trauma that you're suffering, and then we allow you to finally like move on from that trauma. But it's so cool because unlike traditional talk therapy, you're not going into a room and someone asks you, so how are you feeling today? Like, what do you want to talk about? And I think especially with a lot of men, I know I've worked with my friends and they love it because they're like, I don't have to sit there and take a long time and spend years not really knowing where to go. You tell me what I want to talk about. We talk about it for 20 minutes. I don't even need to go into that much detail, and I can walk out and feel lighter.
That's exactly it. I didn't even know that that was what the cause of the difficulty in my life was. Like there was no way that I get there through just a conversation or basic kind of basically looking back in my memory, and it was interesting getting to that because I was very open about talking about it, but I never thought that I should or thought that it was connected in any way. And knowing that it was a direction I could go and what was to be focused on, I was able to understand more about myself through really specifically looking at that instance in my life.
Wait, so Reef, for you, was it your experience that like just kind of throughout childhood, then you just sort of felt isolated and to a point where then you got to kind of adult and you weren't, what was your experience? So people know, like.
I really was self-isolating for a long period in my life. It was not, I didn't know why, but I didn't feel comfortable speaking in a normal way, in something that in a way that I could connect with other people.
Even with your family, right?
Even with my family. Yeah. It was a couple of years there when I was probably a year into college, I really just started to close off. And it was after I'd left high school where it was that everything you said was accentuated quite largely in that setting. And I really did not know how to deal with my own kind of processing of new situations, not even problems, but things that I didn't know how to deal with in the first place, never taught how to deal with. It was rough, but.
Because when you first came in, like what point were you at? You were were you not functioning in society or?
You're not functioning. Yeah. I was at the lowest possible point in that. And I might have been able to go lower if I'd never been able to recognize that I could get help through you, through other kind of techniques that were both like combining my body and my mental state and my reaction state, all of these different parts of me that could be connected and could be feeding off of each other, whether for better or worse. And it was really a tough time in my life when I did first start talking to you.
Where do you feel like you are now?
I am a completely different person. Like it's night and day. When you ask any of my family, my friends, all of them, they can see a real difference in every part of my being. The way I speak, the way I work, the way I interact in basic forms and complicated forms. And it's a different life that I'm leading now, completely.
How do you keep this progress moving forward? I know, again, the cool work with QNRT is you move on, you keep moving forward, but there is something to be said about maintenance and self-care. What is your journey looking like in that?
Well, I believe that it's overall health and desire to feel as good as I possibly can is a big one. To want to acknowledge when something is wrong, to acknowledge when I'm going back down that slope and try to find what I can do to help myself now that I know that it can be done. Sadly, I didn't know it then, so I didn't really look for it. But now that I do, I can see a direction to go, something to follow, a light in the distance kind of thing. And it's very liberating knowing that, because it wasn't always the case. And having that ability to go towards something, whether or not you know what it is, it gives you hope and gives you an ability to kind of forge your own path again.
You feel now that your family and your friends are there to like love and support you?
Yeah.
You feel that? Yeah. And so it's just so interesting because couple QNRT and, couple neurofeedback and QNRT sessions. And then you just shifted like what was there, that whole support system that was there, right? Trying to reach you. I feel like in your case, just your nervous system sort of got unstuck from the challenges, I guess, right? So you just became unstuck and could process that people are there to love and support you. And yeah. And then I remember you came back one time and you're like, yeah, me and my dad were golfing. And I'm like, wait, so you and your dad are just hanging out all the time? And you're like, oh yeah, we're like best friends now.
That I can't thank you enough for. It changed my entire relationship with my family. That is funny you mentioned that.
Yeah.
It was immediate, night and day, like how I processed what he was trying to do for me. I would assume negative always, because it was the way he kind of responded and who he was as a person. And knowing that he was not trying to hurt me, not trying to force me into a box here, changed the way I saw interactions with him across the board. And it really was immediate.
How would you explain it? Like you were able to, your nervous system was able to calm down enough that you could accept other people? Is that like...
I didn't think of it as my nervous system, which was interesting because it definitely was. And the way I immediately reacted subconsciously and the way my body would react, it completely switched. But I thought of it more as acknowledging that there are things that I have no control over and things that I cannot change. And knowing that there is a reason behind actions that I don't necessarily know. I'm being in another person's mind is something that I was trying to do, which is incredibly foolish because there's no understanding why somebody or what somebody's doing, but the why is the important part. And seeing that there was actual reason behind what he was doing that I was not accepting or understanding or even okay with, that seeing that there was a desire to help change the way I thought about people.
Just all people.
All people.
It's amazing, right? I mean,
And that's so much of the QNRT. Well, again, you take the neurofeedback, and I remember doing quite a bit of it, and then waking up one morning and having been living in a state of such anxiety for 14 years, and waking up one day and just being like, "Oh my God, like I'm peaceful. Like, is this what normal people feel like?"
Right. You only know what you know.
What you know,
right.
and
yeah,
when you've been dealing with it your entire for as long as you can remember, you don't realize, like, you're just surviving. You're not thriving. You're not living. You're just like surviving and dealing with the cards you've been dealt with. And again, I think when you take that and you balance out your brain waves and you become in like a much more peaceful state, and then you take the QNRT, which is so beneficial for all types of relationships, there's no longer beef between individuals. There's no longer animosity. It's just kind of like, you know what? I'm at peace knowing that you're doing the best you can, and we're all just living in this world trying to support each other. Like, you just become like a better person, but also less on the defense all the time.
Exactly. It's the most freeing feeling that I have ever been able to acknowledge in myself, and just letting go of all of the aggression and anxiety and knowing that there is nothing on my back that I need to hold on to. It's something that I'd never even acknowledged, being in that state for so long, 14 years. That astounding that there could be such an immediate change in something that had been part of your life for so long. And that is something that I cannot say enough good things about, to be able to get to the point that you can let go of everything that was weighing you down, that you were imposing on yourself.
Yeah, you can let go and also finally look forward to the future because you've let all that weight off your shoulders go with it.
It was knowing there's a direction to go was one of the coolest ideas that I never even thought was possible. And it was very interesting kind of integrating that in my life.
Yeah, and that's something, again, when we talk about stigmas, mental health, what people are going through, and why we really want to bring awareness to this cause, that there is a sense of hope and change out there for people going through all types of struggles that you really think you can't break free from. Like, that little bit of hope, again, could change one suicide or change the way, like, even like the world's going, and just like become a better place, but save people along the way.
It saves people in almost every way for me, just myself and everybody around me, my relationships, interactions, how I make others feel, instead of bringing that energy to somebody, making somebody feel what I'm feeling. I could be in control of my own processing of the world around me. And it was unbelievable the difference that it made with my family, with my friends, with my minuscule actions during the day, like how much I'd want to go exercise or read or go be a part of a group, anything. It was an incredible difference, and you can see the good that you do instead of trying to avoid the bad that you are able to do.
From your whole experience and kind of now feeling like you've overcome so many challenges, what do you see as your strengths now?
I see quite a few now. My ability to bring positivity around me, my interest in the moment instead of what could be done, what has been done, my desire to be a part of the world around me, which is night and day from what I'd experienced any type of my young adulthood to adulthood. Mostly just how I interact with the world now seems more positive. Like I bring something to everything around me.
Was there something about Dr. Molly's approach that allowed you? I know you went in a little bit hesitant and immediately you did feel better, but you still had to have the willingness to go in the first place. So is there anything about the approach she had that made it easier for you to accept the help?
I think, yeah, there are two things. One is how she immediately understood the issues that I was going through and how she could realistically help me, even on a small scale. The other one is I was truly, truly lost. I was nothing else to lose, kind of thing. And I didn't care how it was fixed. I didn't care what happened, but as long as I could feel better in any way, I was open to trying.
It is amazing. Like the human spirit is so resilient, right? I mean, just the fact that you felt that little shift and then you kept going with it. It's just, that creative spirit of wanting to be healthy and wanting to feel good is, I think, what can, propel the whole healing process forward.
I could not agree more. And I truly thank you every day for even doing what you do. And it was incredible the effect that it had on my life. Even if it was a slow process or even if you affected it immediately, there were changes seen everywhere and still are seeing right now, like trying things that I've never tried, talking to people I've never talked to, even just being comfortable being alone in a way that wasn't negative or aggressively self-conscious, just being able to grow in any state.
It's such a great feeling. And it's fun when when you are the problem and you get to deal with the world the way it is and you get to look at someone and be like, that sounds like a you problem now. Like, I'm good. I've done the work. I'm in a good spot. Like, time for you to get some QNRT. How has being a man dealing with mental health kind of shaped your perspective or affected you during your journey?
It's interesting because I don't exactly know the difference between being a man and anything else. I know that it's hard for me to associate difficulties with other difficulties, how something could affect something else because I hadn't dealt with it before. Mostly just kind of not accepting the fact that it would make my life harder or make me react differently to things that were happening even in a basic sense. And I wasn't able to kind of put together the idea that there was a chain of events that led me to what I was at that time.
I have a 12-year-old son. So I see a lot too with boys, like they are very sensitive and they're not treated with sensitivity. So I feel like a lot of times, even with younger boys, like they'll just be almost mistreated in schools or mistreated by their teachers or mistreated by, someone who should be nurturing and supporting them in a maybe, a different way than little girls. And so I feel like in our society, a lot of times the boys need a lot of support and advocacy because they're so sensitive and there's not a lot of support for them to be active, engaged, energetic beings, right? So I feel like then all of a sudden the boys they shut down earlier in their life and then they're just not processing they're just not processing kind of like how to be situationally. And so I love working with men and kids and just being able to free up their energy so that they can be themselves, I guess.
Yeah, I think their ability to express themselves is suppressed right away. Like you look
I think
at
so. Yeah.
young boys versus young girls, and girls are definitely a little bit more coddled. And when a guy or a man is playing sports or roughing around, you're like, suck it up. Like, don't cry. Like, crying's for girls or whatever it may be. And from such a young age, that teaches you don't know how to express yourself in a healthy way. And then that probably builds up inside, and then the volcano reaction where you just blow up, and you're kind of setting people up for failure in that sense.
Yeah, I think you guys are absolutely right about that. We don't really know how to process situations when we're young in it, both girls and boys. But there wasn't, for me personally, there wasn't an outlet for kind of acceptance and growth off of something and understanding that it was a difficulty and it was something that really was not healthy in my life. And there was very, very few instances where it was accepted that I was struggling and accepted that I could be hurt and sad and not know how to deal with something. And it was interesting, the switch, when I realized that it was okay to start at the bottom and know that I could deal with something one at a time and accept situations, because I'd never been taught that.
A lot of times the systems, the school systems or whatever, can shut down a little boy's energy, right? Like, what do you think looking back could have been pivotal in your life? Do you think there's anything or?
Well, specifically in school, I think there are a few things that would have been a key difference maker. I had a couple learning difficulties, disabilities, however you want to put it, and they were never acknowledged in a way that was truly trying to help me. They were more like trying to classify me in order to know what they can deal with, instead of how to make me want to be better and how to create an environment where I could grow. And yeah, I had a very hard time in school growing up. I was never successful, never had very good grades. I had not many friends, not many interactions that I thought were positive. Even looking back, I just did not feel that I had any ability to grow or create a new part of me or an identity that I had never felt before. It was tough being a part of that system in like the public school system growing up. I think a lot of the guys in my classes felt that. And looking back, they definitely did, but I couldn't acknowledge it at the time because I was going through it myself. Just full blinders, trying to get through, hoping that I'd make it home, like stomach aches all the time, just from feeling like I could not succeed.
Do you think there would have been an environment, like a different type of school system that you could have been successful in, or?
I think there are school systems that cater to that more specifically. I don't know if there's an entire program that actually can help everybody that's a part of it. Because, I mean, you'd need specific programs for every disability, and there's just no way to make that happen. So you group a bunch of people together, the ones that kind of have similar issues or similar interests or abilities, that kind of thing, and try to hope that what you're doing is right. I'm sure that would have helped a little bit, kind of giving me a little bit more room to move. But I'm not sure that there's a true educational system that is able to help people grow, other than accepting that there are differences and trying to deal with those as they come up, instead of letting them build and trying to acknowledge them when you're older and already having struggled for so many years that you don't know what else to do.
I do want to go back to like the raising and the upbringing, because I think this is something we can relate on a little bit, is when you're in that environment, especially looking at the Bay Area where it's just so competitive and you have learning disabilities, which I had as well, and you feel isolated, but then you take that, and I have brothers who are perfectionists and did everything right. And then I also was comparing myself to them and people around me, and then everything is just out of control. And if you are,
It's impossible to keep up
it's
with.
impossible to keep up. But I think, like, again, if you are genetically susceptible to mental health issues, it is just like the beginning of that trigger where, again, the lack of control, the isolation, the never going to be good enough. And you just keep putting this pressure on yourself. And instead of being vulnerable or being able to relate to the people around you and realizing that everyone is feeling maybe a little insecure, everyone's feeling not good enough, or people are dealing with their own stuff. I don't know if it's I don't want to blame parents, I don't want to blame community, but there's some extent where it becomes so competitive. You think you are alone on this island, on this uphill battle. You are never going to be good enough. And you are just like, what's the point? And I think, again, it's like this sad place to be. And it's like, do we become more vulnerable so that we can relate to people? Do we share our stories to get other people help? Like, I don't know the right solution, but I do know that vulnerability and just, again, like asking for help is a good place to start.
It really is. But yeah, as you said, like where we grew up, the specific area, it really is aggressive in how it is trying to mold and educate children. And they really want to see a certain type of person around them. And looking back, asking anybody that was a part of that, even the perfectionists, the ones that were the best and fit in perfectly, they felt the exact same way. And knowing that now is wonderful to know, but also very sad to see.
I know, it's so sad. It's like okay, cool, but like it's so sad.
It was really sad to see that, and way more often than you'd ever be okay with seeing, there'd be a news article about another person feeling like they cannot be what they should be, or are being weighed down by things that truly are not important anywhere else in the world than there. And just watching how that system, that specific system, I guess, because we can relate on that one, would kind of pressure people to be a certain type of person. It really was sad to see those who did not quite fit in react in such a negative way and think that there was no life outside of what they were shown.
I mean, it's just especially like, because it is amazing because you guys had everything at your disposal, right? Like you were probably given every opportunity or like material thing, but the misery you guys described your childhood with is like similar, both of you. Like,
Yeah, I mean, not to give our parents credit, and part of the beautiful thing I think about going through some of your biggest challenges, if not the biggest challenge in life at a young age, is you have that support of your family. And for me, it was like my parents looked at me and said, we are going to keep you safe. We are not going anywhere. Like, sucks to be you, but like you're here with us and we're going to be by your side the entire time. And if you don't have that as an adult, again, you get even more lost and you're suffering more. So the beautiful thing about being a child going through it is you have that support at home. And again, being from where we are, like the resources, but what are those resources? Are they actually making a change? And are they good enough? And why I love the work that we're doing so much is I think that whether you have issues or not, the neurofeedback with, again, whether it's ADHD or just balancing the brain, and then the QNRT giving yourself the ability to feel in a healthy way and to move on from trauma and to process, is just something again, we go back to standard healthcare. Like it's something everybody should just have right off the bat, because then we'd all be set up for success.
It is funny how that is just a direct correlation between how people can see themselves, like an outlet, something that they could go to for help. And amazing how little importance we put on that. I would love to see any type of resource for people to be able to find help, whatever help they're trying to get or is beneficial for them, to even give them a roadmap, any direction to go in. And there's very, very few programs or any type of resource that is giving a possibility to those that think that there is none. And it's heartbreaking to see those who truly place the importance on what they should be, what they need to be, where they can go, instead of just their basic comfort in how they interact with the world.
Yeah, and you're so malleable at a young age too. I think some of the biggest issues is we see these outdoor programs or centers. Parents, again, their parents are suffering too, and it affects the whole family. So parents do whatever they can, and they get advice from doctors and whatnot about, okay, well, we need to keep them safe. Let's send them to this program. They're away for 6 months. When you take a bunch of kids all suffering from the same issues, yes, there's a sense of community. Yes, they're all working towards the same goal, but you take someone fresh who's just getting into this bad cycle, and you take someone who's been in this bad cycle for years now. And unfortunately, those fresh kids are going to learn some of these negative behaviors. And at the end of the day, that can hurt them more than they can help them. And then that kid ends up suffering way longer than they may have even needed to. So it's a sense of community versus individuality about getting the support. It can either be very helpful or very bad at the same time.
Completely agree. There needs to be a little bit more individualism with how somebody treats their own problems, how somebody can approach their own timing in that cycle. Like where they are rolling down the hill. Are they at the top still, or are they absolutely bottoming out? There's very little difference in how they're treated. And it's heartbreaking to see the way that they're almost categorized. No differences between the states they are in life, the way that they can see themselves. And it really does put everybody in the same hole. And it is heartbreaking, but I think there can be a difference, but I really don't know how unless they acknowledge where they are personally and are able to see that they can get help.
At the end of the day, we are individuals, and there is some sense of accountability in how we choose to live our lives. But the role of friends, the role of family, is there something with your experience? Could it have been approached a different way? Do you wish someone had reached out to you and said, hey man, like, can I help? Or is there a direction you think that could have altered your path?
I think it could have, and there could have been a way. I didn't show that I was struggling to the point that I was struggling until it was too late to listen. And that was definitely a mistake I made, but not consciously. So I don't really know how I would have done it differently. But when I did, when they were first starting to say, like, you need to figure this out, you need to start understanding how to move forward, I was lost. Like, there was no movement. And it was interesting, but I do believe if I had been open about the problems earlier, been open about how I felt in general, not just specifically at that time, whether or not I was feeling lonely or sad or hurt or even like physically, mentally, either way, I could have probably approached it sooner, but I don't know if I would have accepted the help in the way that I did if I wasn't in the state that I was when I first really tried to fix the issues.
Do you think there are any specific signs that, as someone who's gone through it, you would encourage people to look for or identify in a friend that they see struggling?
Yes, some key ones actually. Isolation is the big one for me. I cut off from everything. I was not leaving my house on a daily basis. I was ignoring everything that I was supposed to be doing. And I would not respond to texts. I would not interact. I wouldn't go meet people. I wouldn't go see my family. I would just kind of believe that I should not be a part of things. And I didn't realize how much that affected me and how that kind of grew. And it was exponentially more difficult to do it once I'd started. It was this very slippery slope into complete acceptance that I was not able to fix it.
So like isolation and depression and
Isolation, depression, maybe aggressive reactions or negative reactions to basic things.
Pushing people away, I think it's a big one.
Yes, exactly. It's that, yeah, huge. And almost not being able to process what is happening around you. That could be a form of depression. It could also be a form of acceptance that there is nothing else you can do. And they were obvious looking back, but I never accepted the fact that it was happening. So I was never willing to show it.
Reef, is there any message that you'd like to share with individuals about mental health kind of seeking help?
Yeah, I think that there is always a path to go down. It may be different from what I did, from what we did. It may be something that I've never heard of, something that is out of the box completely. But there is always a way to change your state and to create a life that you don't necessarily see but want. And you can move forward knowing that there is something out there to help you. And looking for it is everything. I was sadly not in a place to look for it. I had people to truly help me, like make sure that I was able to get into a place where I could get that help. But looking back, I definitely could have had a more optimistic view, even of that. Just knowing that there is something that could be done.
And people are there, like, really, people are there for you, right? Like, I mean, that's why we're all we're not alone in it. And just, I think, always reaching out to other people and for support and help and safety.
No, I think we have to realize no one's ever alone, and you have to want to accept the help and be open to it. But again, so many people can relate to these feelings, and maybe you need to make the effort at first, but no matter what, everybody has someone around them that's willing to help or be there or support.
It is very, very difficult to look at the world thinking that nobody can help you or will help you or wants what's best for you. And that may be the first step to seeing a different part of yourself that you have lost.
Any other things you'd like to ask or share as we wrap up here?
I'd love to say that what you guys are doing is absolutely wonderful. Everybody should listen to your own past and your own experience and the way that you've tried to bring about a different approach to creating a better life for people, a better sense of identity, a better way to know how to move in a world that is not trying to hurt you. And this whole podcast, I absolutely love, and I'm very excited that you guys are doing it. I will absolutely stay connected and watch all of them. Very curious to see who you're bringing on, because I'm sure there's some wonderful people.
Yeah, we have some good ones.
Okay, I'm very excited. But thank you both. I thought this was an incredible idea when I heard you guys were doing it. Didn't know necessarily when it was happening, but I've been very excited for a long time.
Yeah, thank you so much for being open to talking with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for going on this journey with us, and we can't wait to see where you take the rest of your life.
Thank you. You guys too. Everything is open air, and I'm very happy that we can kind of share this.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Centered Presents The Future of Health. If you're interested in learning more, please visit us at drmollybrown.com or email us at media@drmollybrown.com.